The only effective way to really stop this epidemic is not with technological ways, but with the development of an attitude, I am too good to let this happen to me. We do not go for such things. This is absolutely obnoxious and odious.
The answer is to name the monster. The answer is to take an active role here. The answer is for parents to become aware about this in a way that they just talk to their child about it. They make it part of safety, the same way you teach your child how to cross the street safely or how to engage in water safety or how to understand safety in approaching strangers in the real world, to explain to them what some basic rules are about sites that you're going to allow them to visit, what to do when they come across upsetting material inadvertently, and what to do if somebody is reaching out to them who they don't know and trying to meet with them in a way that could potentially be dangerous.
When a 75-year-old man discovers a fly in his soup, he puts the whole plate away. He's not going to eat it. Well, whatever made him think that a fly is so disgusting? You know, after all, little infants who are 5 or 6 months old will put insects in their mouth. But what happens is when an infant puts an insect in its mouth, the mother has a horrible reaction, goes into a convulsion, and screams about how ugly that is. And that impression remains with all of his life. That's the kind of attitude that we ought to convey to our children. Objectionable material is absolutely disgusting, and it is something that a person with dignity and pride would never allow himself to indulge in.
So what can parents do? The number one thing that parents can do is remember that relationship is the key. There is no technological solution that's foolproof, but relationships are the key. Setting limits. Parents often have a difficult time setting limits. I heard a great story from Dr. Pelkowitz. He had a family in therapy, the parents and a rebellious teenage son. And the discussion was getting violent, the screaming and yelling, because the parents had decided it was about time they were going to set limits in the home. And it got so violent and so raucous that Dr. Pelkowitz asked the parents to step outside. After the parents stepped outside, the young man in therapy calmed down, and he let out a deep sigh, and he said to Dr. Pelkowitz, "It's about time." It can be very difficult for parents to set limits for teenagers in today's world. There's an expectation of freedom, but it's a skill that we have to learn. Children need to feel secure and know that there are limits. It's wonderful to discuss with your children what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. What are the rules of your home? What internet access is acceptable to you, if any? What technology are they allowed to use? What about when they go to a friend's home? What can they purchase? Parents take it for granted that children make good judgments, but sometimes just opening the dialogue and having the conversation can help children make good decisions.
Some parents may choose to say, look, this is not a risk I want to have. I'm going to get rid of internet in my home. I'm going to get rid of my computers. I'll only use my computer at work. And that may be a choice that some parents are able to take. The key fact to be aware of is that often is not a permanent solution, because children very often will go on the internet in a friend's home, or they'll go to the library and get access to the internet. They might get internet in a cousin's house. They might get internet access in visiting a friend's father's or mother's office at work. So that may be a partial solution, but the real solution lies in what psychologists refer to as monitoring in the context of a close relationship. Having supervision of a child where they know that you're standing over their shoulders, you're aware of what's happening, but you can't lock them up and throw away the key. All of that has to be done in the context of a child really connecting to the parent.
Various efforts to try and block out kinds of things that you don't want children to see are unreliable, And not only are they unreliable, but they're unwise as well. The reason I say that is because a friend of mine told me that he had an altercation with his 11-year-old son because they were watching television and something came up which he thought was improper for the son to see, and he asked him to leave the room, and the youngster said, "No way." So he had to get up and drag him out of the room. And I told him that he had made a serious mistake, because what he should have done was go over to the television, turn it off, and say, "We do not allow this kind of trash in our home." The way he did it gave the youngster a message: this is not good for children, it's only good for daddy and mommy.
It has to become something of a joint project. It has to become something that they realize that parents also have nisyonos and temptations in this area, that someone who uses the internet for business can very easily be lured into something which has nothing to do with his business and which is inappropriate business. And we're fighting this together. It's a project. It's a family project. Father and son, mother and daughter. We recognize the dangers out there. We want to fortify ourselves and strengthen ourselves. You help me, I'll help you. The more we feel better about each other, the more we feel better about our relationship, the closer we feel, the less need we have for these other things. The more we feel good about what we're doing in life, the less depression and emptiness we feel to search for other things. It's something that has to be worked on together, that has to be developed together, that has to be planned together rather than just disciplined and threatened and forced, because that way is only going to lead to more serious problems.
I don't want to see the internet problem, as grave as it is, being taken out of context. This is a question of parents' relationship to their children. It's important to know not only what children read, not only who their friends are, but parents should have a strong interest in their children. They ought to take out time. The children should know that this time is for the child. Now, I know you have to be at the office and you have to work late hours, and I understand that very well. But we have to prioritize. Our children are our greatest priority. And let me tell you an interesting finding that came about several years ago. A group of researchers interviewed hundreds of families in which there were youngsters who had behavior problems of one kind or another. And they interviewed a number of families, many families, where there were no such problems. And they fed all of the data into computers to see whether the computer could pick up any prominent feature that distinguished the two groups. The surprising feature was that the healthier families had more shared family mealtime together. Now, no one would have thought that that is as important. But when families eat together and they communicate to each other, right, and do so in a pleasant setting, and do so frequently, I think that that is a strong bond between parents and children.
Psychologists say rules without relationships equals rebellion. The key here is you need to have rules. You need to have rules about internet access. Your child needs to know that you're looking over their shoulder and know what they're doing online.
Hopefully the day is not too far away where parents are beginning to realize the dangers that exist. But there's a danger that exists within that realization. And that danger, I believe, is if this just becomes another issue to fight with our children about, then we haven't really gained very much by that realization. It isn't going to be stopped by a battle. It isn't going to be stopped by discipline. It isn't going to be stopped by argumentation and by threats and by punishment, because all it takes is a simple cell phone or any other very, very easily accessible contact to connect them with this world. And unfortunately, in the lives of teenage kids especially, the more that we pressure them and push them and forbid them and threaten them, the more that there's some internal mechanism which tends to resist and looks for more. And sometimes we even encourage them to enjoy it more because they're doing it in a way that is inappropriate, and they can, they have to connive and conceive ways to avoid the establishment. So I think what we really need is very open dialogue, very frank discussion. We have to negotiate limits.
We need to assure our children that they can come to us with anything and that we won't overreact. Because if we do overreact, we run the risk that they may never want to come to us again.
We have to give our children enough time so that we can find out what is going on in their inner world. And that is the important thing. We all have an inner and an outer world. Right? Children want to be understood. They want their parents to understand them. And I think that the greatest gift that a parent can give a child is the time that the parent gives them to have a close relationship with him or her. Now, if the parent is so involved with his job, his profession, whatever, that he cannot give the child the time that the child needs, the message that the child is getting is, I will work to buy things for you and to give you economical support because that is important. But I cannot give you myself because that is not important. And that is a very serious message to give to the children.
We have to be careful and make sure our children know that we're willing to listen and we're willing to talk to them. This is the world they're in. We may not be able to take them out and change the world, but we can make sure that they know that we care and we want to understand their world.